My name is Claire Lane. I'm 30 years old and I live in a small town just outside Boulder, Colorado. If you had asked me about my family before, I would have shrugged and said, pretty normal, maybe a little biased, but not anymore. After what just happened, I understand better than anyone. I've never been the chosen one in this family. I'm just the shadow next to the shining star that my parents proudly call their perfect youngest daughter. Emily, my sister, is 27. She was raised like real royalty. Every time she pouted, our house shook like it had just experienced an earthquake. She had everything: a brand new car on her 16th birthday, a study abroad trip to Italy just because she wanted the experience, and a loud, over-the-top group of friends that my parents still refer to as the future elite. And what about me? I'm the older sister, the one who has to set an example, sacrifice, and always be understanding. When I got a scholarship to a public university, my mom just sighed and said, "At least we don't have to take out loans." But when Emily got accepted to an art school in New York, where tuition is over $40,000 a year, my dad nearly cried with pride. I used to think maybe I was just too ordinary. Not bright enough, not delicate enough to be protected. I started working at 18, bought an old Honda, and moved out as soon as I saved enough for a deposit. No one asked if I was okay. That year, no one remembered my birthday except an older coworker at the bookstore where I worked part-time. Over time, I trained myself not to expect anything. When I called home, my mom would ask, "So, when are you going to bring someone home to meet us?" As Dad only mentioned that Emily had gotten a raise, even though she switched jobs like most people change coats. I would just mumble a yeah and hang up. I got used to life on the sidelines until Emily announced she was getting married. When I received the invitation, I kept a neutral attitude. No expectations, no resentment. I was still her sister. I would show up, dress nicely, smile for pictures, have a drink, and leave before the dancing started. What I didn't know was that this wedding, which was supposed to be the happiest day of my sister's life, would be the moment I was pushed out of the very last boundary of being considered family. I should have seen that coming. When my mom called me, the purpose wasn't to help me arrange a hotel. The purpose was to remind me not to wear anything that might overshadow the bride. When Emily sent the list of bridesmaids, my name wasn't on it. Instead, she had her old college roommate and her high school best friend. I told myself, maybe she just wanted her closest friends by her side. But nothing could prepare me for what really happened that day. From the moment I stepped into the reception hall and saw the seating chart, I understood that this wasn't just favoritism. It was deliberate exclusion, more sophisticated and ruthless than I ever imagined. It took me nearly 2 minutes to process what I was seeing. My name wasn't listed at any of the main tables. Not with family, not with my parents. Finally, a man in a black suit led me to a small table near the entrance. Right next to the coat rack, there was a lonely plastic chair covered with a wrinkled white cloth. No flowers, no menu, no one assigned to sit there. I stood there quietly, not angry, just overwhelmed as I realized I really wasn't invited. I was barely tolerated. A light giggle floated up behind me. It was Samantha, Emily's best friend, who once called me the bossy sister at a class reunion. She glanced at me, rolled her eyes, then turned away, clearly amused. I clenched my seating card in my hand and walked straight toward the bride's room. On the way, I kept trying to reason with myself. Maybe this is a mistake. Maybe it's not intentional. But when I saw Emily lounging on the velvet couch, laughing with a group of friends, it was clear she didn't care where I was sitting. "Emily." My voice was calm but firm. She turned around, her golden locks pinned back with a pricey silver clip. "Oh, Claire, you made it." Her tone was light, as if she were greeting a late waitress. I held up my seating card. "My seat is next to the coat rack." Emily pursed her lips as if she had just remembered something slightly awkward. "Oh, right. There were some last-minute changes." The main table started to get a bit crowded, and I was the one who got moved. I asked in a calm tone, "Yeah, you're not with anyone. You're not in the bridal party." She shrugged. "And you're not really close with our extended family. I thought you'd be more comfortable in a quieter spot." I felt like someone just slapped me, not because of the seating, but because of how she dismissed it. as if I were a logistical nuisance they had to politely steer clear of. "Emily, you're my sister," I said, looking straight into her eyes. "Do you really think locking me in the hallway is respecting others?" She chuckled softly. This time, she didn't even pretend to be nice. "You've been away from home for many years, Claire. You're not really part of this family anymore. I'm just being logical. Isn't that reasonable?" I repeated, bitterness rising in my throat. Just then, my mom appeared, holding a cream-colored purse and looking very calm. Her face stiffened slightly when she saw me. "Claire, don't make a scene. This is Emily's special day." I turned to her. "You know, my seating arrangement." She paused for a moment, then nodded slightly. "I told Emily you might feel hurt, but oh well. You're grown up now. Don't take it to heart." Strangely, that was the most painful part. "You're grown up now. Don't take it to heart." As if growing up meant losing the right to feel hurt, to be treated like family. I took a deep breath. So just because I live alone and didn't bring anyone, I'm no longer considered family. My mom glanced at Emily and then slowly replied, "Claire, families change. Each person has their own role. And today, your role is to support the bride." I stood still. I didn't argue because at that moment, anything I said would mean nothing. Instead, something colder replaced it. A clarity, sharp and quiet like metal against stone. They were not careless. They had decided to let me know. I no longer belonged here. And there was one thing Emily forgot. I was still the only one in this family who knew exactly what lay behind the white dress she was wearing. I walked out of the bride's room feeling heavy. Not angry, not in pain. I felt like a string inside me had just snapped. And I had no intention of tying it back together. When I returned to the forgotten table near the coat rack, I saw a woman I didn't know standing there holding a champagne glass, her eyes scanning my place card. She turned to me with a smile that I couldn't call friendly. "You must be Claire." Her voice was gentle but sharp. I nodded cautiously. "Yes, I'm the bride's sister." The woman nodded slightly, her gaze hinting at amusement. "I'm Margaret, Grim's mother. Emily hasn't said much about you." To be honest, I thought Claire was an old college friend. I didn't respond. She looked at me for another moment, then set her glass down on the table right next to the restroom, where no one wanted to linger. "Funny," the sister said, "not sitting with the main guests. Are you sure you're close with your family?" An ordinary question, but it hides an intentional motive. I didn't need to guess a second time. She knew exactly what was going on, and she enjoyed it. I smiled calmly. I guess Emily prioritizes those she's closest to. "Oh," she tilted her head. "So, her sister doesn't count as close." That's when I realized Margaret wasn't just passing through. She had come at the right time in the right place, armed with the perfect words to push me down a rung on the ladder my family had built. Emily, my sister, who just bluntly told me that I was no longer family, spun a one-sided story enough for her future mother-in-law to see me as a pathetic outsider. Maybe even a joke. What a shame. Margaret continued, her tone still calm. "In every wedding I've ever organized or attended, the closest people to the bride and groom usually sit in the best spots." I chuckled, no longer hiding it. "Yes, that's what I used to think too." She shrugged, her gaze piercing through me. "But maybe this is the right decision. Clearly, you're not the center of attention." Just one sentence, a clean, cold remark. And in that moment, hearing the woman Emily had tried so hard to impress publicly belittle me at her wedding, I knew I had been placed exactly where they wanted me. Lower, quieter, more easily overlooked. But then I remembered the things Emily had whispered over the phone during those little coffee meetups we had. Just the two of us. How she used to call Margaret the control freak and admitted she only tolerated her until the wedding was over to avoid causing trouble. I tilted my head slightly, catching Margaret's probing gaze. "To be honest, I was a bit surprised to see you being so friendly." "Oh," Margaret blinked. "Why is that?" I shrugged. "Emily usually gets tense whenever she talks about you. There was even a time she said, "Well, let me think. If she speaks at the wedding, I swear I'll leave." That statement stuck with me. The hand holding her glass stiffened. Her smile changed. Less shiny, more icy. I continued, my voice light as if commenting on the weather. "She also said that you were too controlling, and she only put up with that to avoid conflict in front of her fiancé." Margaret stared at me for a long time. What did you just say? I tilted my head. Margaret stared at me for a long time. What did you just say? I tilted my head, feigning confusion. Oh, maybe I misremembered? Anyway, that's between the two of you. I shouldn't get involved in this. The atmosphere between us became thick, and at that moment, I saw what Emily never wanted me to witness. The pain in my mother-in-law's eyes. A woman who once seemed untouchable now stood still as if she had just realized she was betrayed. I turned away, grabbed my glass of water from my dull little table, and walked down the hallway. But unlike the first time I walked away in quiet resignation, this time I carried a storm with me. When I returned to the banquet hall, the music had shifted to a soft ballad. The glasses were filled with wine, and all eyes were on the couple getting ready to start the ceremony. I stood at the edge of the hallway, watching Margaret, the woman who had just mocked me a few minutes ago, now approaching the podium with a stone-cold expression. No smile, no grace. Just minutes ago, she was gleeful while poking fun at me. Now she was heading straight for her daughter-in-law, her gaze sharp as a knife. Emily had just stepped out from backstage, holding a bouquet of white flowers. She smiled and greeted guests on both sides, acting as if everything was perfect. But when she saw Margaret's expectant gaze, she stopped in her tracks. I didn't know what Margaret would say, but I knew this. She wasn't the type to easily accept humiliation, especially the kind whispered behind her back and now exposed to the public. No one noticed me as I stepped up to the podium. I didn't shout. I just needed to raise my glass of orange juice to my chest, stand tall, and say, "Excuse me, can I have a moment?" The music softened. A few people turned around. Emily looked back, her eyes staring at me, a hint of panic flashing beneath her perfect makeup. "What are you doing?" she whispered, still trying to smile. I didn't look at her. I kept my gaze fixed on Margaret, the woman completely still, her hands clenched tightly in front of her. I thought it was time to clear a few things up. I had heard too much already, and now everything needed to be put back in its place. I had heard too much already, and now everything needed to be set right. The air in the room froze. "Mrs. Margaret," I turned to her, keeping my tone calm. "Emily once said, you shouldn't wear a sequin dress today because it will overshadow the bride. Isn't that right, Emily?" Emily's face became weary. "Be quiet," I continued. "She also said that if you were to give a speech at the wedding, she would cover her face with a veil and step outside." A light chuckle rose from the left side of the room. I saw one of the bridesmaids cover her mouth, her eyes sparkling with surprise and delight. "Emily," Margaret growled. "What is this?" Emily stammered, her hands visibly shaking. "No, that's not how it is." I tilted my head. "Not how it is? Then what about when she said she would endure you for a few more months, and then find a reason to limit visits after the wedding? Or when she called you a power-hungry person wanting to control the wine selection?" "Stop it," Emily shouted, her face flushed. But I wasn't finished. "Margaret, you don't have to believe me, but Emily once said, word for word, I would rather get married without a ceremony than let my mother-in-law read a boring speech that puts everyone to sleep." Whispers spread throughout the room like a rising tide. The music had completely stopped. All that remained was the sound of truth stripping away the perfect facade. My mother stood motionless in the far corner, her face as pale as paper. My father stared down at the floor, wanting nothing more than to disappear. I glanced past them. The people who told me not to make a fuss now had nowhere to hide. Margaret stepped forward, no longer angry, just visibly disappointed. "My daughter," she slowly said, her eyes fixed on Emily as if she were seeing her for the first time. "So this is how you talk about your new family." Emily hesitated. "I didn't think she would do that." "Oh, you didn't think your sister would be here, or that someone would expose you in front of everyone?" Margaret's voice wasn't loud, but it echoed throughout the now silent ballroom. Emily turned to look at me, her eyes no longer filled with anger, just pure hatred. "You ruined everything." I calmly met her gaze. "No, Emily, you did all of this yourself. You just didn't think anyone would speak up. You came up with this," Emily shouted, her high-pitched voice echoing down the hallway. "You twisted every word I said just to ruin my big day." I said nothing. I just stood there, facing the crowd of guests who remained frozen, unsure whether to look away or keep watching this unexpected spectacle. Margaret took a step back, her hands clenched. "Created. So I imagined all those midnight calls. I was delusional about what you said about me and my family. Emily lunged forward, trying to grab Margaret's hand, but she suddenly pulled back. I poured time, money, and my reputation into this wedding, and what do I get? A daughter-in-law who talks behind my back, pretending to be polite in public, and builds her entire image on lies. I didn't mean it, Emily hissed, her face flushed with a mix of fear and anger. She turned to look at me, her eyes filled with fury. Is this what you wanted, Claire? To make me lose everything, so everyone would pity you? I'm keeping my voice steady. Calm down. I say this because you've been using others as props for too long. Today, finally, your role has come to an end. At that moment, Lucas, the groom, who had been standing still amidst the chaos, finally spoke up. Emily, is that true? His voice wasn't loud, but it sliced through the discomfort like a knife. Everything fell silent again. No, Emily screamed, shaking her head vigorously. Lucas, you know me. I'm just overwhelmed. Okay. I didn't think what I said to Claire would come back to haunt me. Lucas frowned. So, you did say those things. I was just venting. I didn't mean to speak ill of your mother. You know me, she pleaded, almost clasping her hands together. Margaret laughed bitterly and turned to my parents, who had remained silent throughout, as if they had nothing to do with this. And you too, she said clearly, her tone no longer polite. This is what your parenting has produced. A liar, manipulative, and blaming those who dare to speak the truth. My mother turned pale, shaking her head anxiously. Margaret, I believe Emily didn't mean any harm. Never blame her for who she is. No harm intended? Margaret interrupted her, her voice growing louder. But then, she had no qualms about using my family as a tool to maintain her image. What a masterpiece of a two-faced life. My father gently pulled my mother's hand, signaling her to stop talking. But it was too late. The whole energy in the room had shifted. A carefully staged celebration had turned into a complete disaster. Some guests had stood up. Others avoided eye contact with the bride, as if even looking at her was shameful. Lucas pulled his phone out of his pocket, glanced at the screen, then looked up. Emily, did you know my mom called me last night? Worried that you had never reached out to her yourself? Emily was silent, her hands clenched tight. I thought you were just being discreet. But after what I heard today, I'm not so sure anymore. That statement hit Emily hard. Her face turned pale, then flushed with anger. You called off the wedding over something my sister made up. Lucas took a step back, his face scrunching. I don't know who to believe anymore, but I know I can't walk into a marriage built on secrets and double talk. Emily looked around as if hoping anyone, would step up and salvage what was left of her crumbling image, but everyone remained silent. She turned to me, her voice hissing through clenched teeth. You won. I looked straight into her eyes. No one wins, Emily. You only make yourself lose. I stood there for a moment in the party hall, basking in the soft golden light, surrounded by eyes pretending not to look. No one called out to me. No one stepped up to defend Emily. The atmosphere was heavy as forged iron, weighing down on every guest, as if every mask in the room had slipped out of place. I took a deep breath, then turned away. Not in a hurry, not ashamed. I walked straight to the gift table draped in white cloth near the stage where Emily and Lucas were supposed to stand and accept congratulations. My mom softly called, Claire, what are you doing? I didn't answer. She knew. Everyone in that dance room knew. The small wooden box I brought that morning was neatly placed among the flashy gifts wrapped in silver ribbons. It wasn't the most expensive gift, but I had spent weeks picking it out, engraving their names and wedding date on the glass. A gift with real meaning, a gesture from the heart before I was pushed aside like a stranger at someone else's dinner. I bent down, lifted the box with both hands, and turned to face Emily. Her eyes widened. You can't be serious. I gently tightened my grip. You said I wasn't family anymore, so there's no reason to keep a gift from a stranger. Emily's face flushed. You're being childish. Even now, you have to create a scene. I chuckled lightly. Oh, no, I'm just reclaiming a misdelivered package. I don't want it to cause an allergic reaction in your marriage. A few guests stifled laughter. Others sighed or shook their heads, but no one spoke up in support of Emily. Not a single person. I turned back to read. Good luck. He looked at me, then down at the box, his eyes drifting to a place I couldn't read. But he didn't say anything. And to me, that spoke volumes. My mom stepped forward, her voice urgent. Claire, don't make things worse. Just leave the gift and go. Please. I didn't look at her. I just stepped back, holding tight to the only thing that ever symbolized my effort to be kind. I thought everything was clear now. I said, I'm just following the rules this family has taught me. Not invited, not welcomed, not necessary. Margaret stood near the champagne table, still watching me. And as I turned away, I caught something I hadn't seen in years. A silent nod of respect from a woman who once thought I didn't belong here. I walked toward the door, the sound of my heels echoing lightly on the stone floor. With each step, I shed a layer of what I had carried for too long. Emily's voice rang out behind me. You're going to regret this. Keep this up and you'll push everyone away. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. The last glint of the chandelier's light swept across the glass wall as the dance room door closed behind me. Outside, the air was cool. No wind, just enough chill to make my skirt flutter gently as I hugged the box to my chest. My eyes weren't stinging. I didn't need tears. Only a quiet awareness blossomed in my chest, as if I had just reclaimed something that had been stolen long ago. Not a seat at the wedding, but my self-respect. The next morning, I woke up around 9 a.m. Sunlight streamed through the curtains in the living room. My phone, face down on the side table next to the couch, buzzed in short, urgent bursts. The kind of frantic energy that I didn't need to check to recognize. I picked it up. 16 missed calls, 9 voicemails, 22 text messages from my mom, from Emily, even from my aunt in Arizona, who only calls when her daughter's tuition is due. I wasn't in a hurry to read them. I slowly brewed a cup of coffee, then sat down and scrolled through the influx of messages. Mom, Claire, what did you two do? You ruined your sister's big day. Call me back right now. This isn't over. You call that sisterhood? Aren't you ashamed? I can't believe you actually did that. You made Lucas question everything just because you're jealous. You need to apologize. You have to apologize. Do you think you're right? How sad. I leaned back in the chair, coffee cup in hand, sipping each gulp as if it were the only rational thing left in the room. Then the last message came from a name I hadn't expected. Dad, call me when you can. Nothing urgent, just thought you should know a few things. I hesitated for a moment, then typed, called. He answered after the second ring. Hey, kid, he said, his voice deeper than usual. Dad's listening, I replied briefly. There was a pause, then he sighed. I didn't mean to get involved, but I couldn't ignore it yesterday. I stayed silent, letting him continue. He might think I was quiet because I didn't care, but the truth is, I was just used to letting Mom and Emily make all the decisions. I thought silence would keep the peace, but after yesterday, there was no way to pretend anymore. I gently set my cup down. So, what happened after I left? Dad replied. Lucas didn't go back to the hotel with Emily. He drove alone to his mom's house. According to Margaret, they fought all night. I closed my eyes, not out of satisfaction, but from exhaustion. Years of silent pain, all culminating in a single explosive night. And what about Emily's mother-in-law? Margaret called your mom at 7:00 this morning. She made it clear that she didn't want Emily involved anymore. She said that Emily was dishonest and not worthy of being her son's wife. I leaned back in my chair. How did Mom react? Of course, she blamed you. I chuckled softly. No surprise there. Dad hesitated. Emily still wouldn't admit she was wrong. She thinks you made everything worse. And believe it or not, she wants you to call Margaret and say it was all just a misunderstanding. I was silent for a few seconds, then slowly replied, I won't apologize for telling the truth. I know, he said, letting out a gentle sigh. And to be honest, I don't think you should. I turned back to the window. The sun was high, shining on the bushes swaying just outside the glass. I didn't feel happy, but I felt a calm certainty, as if I was finally standing where I was always meant to be. You know, Claire, Dad added, maybe for the first time, I really understand why you keep your distance from this family. I didn't answer right away, but in my mind, the truth had never been clearer. In the end, It wasn't me who chose to distance myself from them. They pushed me away time and time again, quietly, deliberately, and now they were simply dealing with the consequences of what they had sown. "Are you okay?" Dad asked gently. I nodded even though he couldn't see. "I'm fine." Claire's story is really a powerful reminder that silence isn't always noble. Sometimes it's what allows the bad guys to keep stepping all over you. In real life, there will be times you have to speak up. Not to win, but to protect yourself from being trampled on again. The truth can cause a collapse. But sometimes, a collapse is the only way to break free from relationships that exist only because of lies. Courage isn't about fighting. It's about knowing when to walk away and never look back. What do you think about how Claire chose to face the truth and her family boundaries? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep, real-life stories and valuable lessons about family.